Other recording software. Alright, that's started too. Okay. I think we are ready to begin. Alright. So I guess we should probably start with introducing ourselves. I'm Nick. I am the DM of our Shattered Kingdoms campaign. And why don't you introduce yourself, Madeline?
Well, I'm Madeline, and I'm the editor for all our documents and such.
Yep. So I'm the DM.
For
Sorry. I didn't
I was
mean to
just
cut
saying
you
for
off.
various. I just meant for various campaigns that we do.
Yeah, we
Yeah.
do multiple campaigns, but we are currently only doing a podcast on this one. Our podcast today will be a bit different in that it'll just be me and Madeline instead of the whole group, and we will be going over the lore of the Shattered Kingdoms rather than having an actual D&D session. And I just figured that it'd be best for me and Madeline to do this because we're kind of like the biggest nerds in the Shattered Kingdoms. So I'm the DM and she's editing all the stuff I make. My grammar is pretty poor. And I'm a humanities.
Misspelled traveler.
Yeah, misspelled traveler. And that really sucks. 'Cause, I mean, I think, technically like humanities major. It's like as a history major, I'm supposed to be able to write well and have proper grammar, but clearly I do not, due to the necessity of an editor.
Not that bad. It's just inconsistent.
You
So like change styles like several times.
like how so?
Like when you were doing those character like leveling for those races in the campaign that we can't mention because we don't own it.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Um, you would have like level one, level two, level three, level five, but then like level one would be level, and then one spelled out with the O
Oh, okay,
capitalized,
yeah, yeah. That's
and
fair.
level two would be level with two spelled out, but it's lowercase. And then by the time you got to five, it would just be level and then the number five.
Yeah.
Just you changed a lot.
Well, that's why we have you. 'Cause you're OCD about that. It sounds like.
Oh well, that's not really.
Yeah,
Uh,
I know it's not that. I was just giving you uh
yeah.
giving you a hard time about it. I mean, I appreciate the editing and making it more presentable.
Well, I just like organizing things like that.
Yes, that's why you're
Lists
the
are my
editor.
friend.
Yeah, we are friends.
Well, I said lists are my friends, but you're
Oh,
my friend too.
I'm sorry. I heard like and plus you're my friend instead of lists are my friend. And I'm like, yeah, we're friends. Like, why are you bringing this up? And
But I was talking about how much I like lists.
oh, yeah, that makes more sense. But are you
Yeah.
friends more with lists or me? The uh
Uh.
the true question.
How about we start this podcast?
Yes, let's start this podcast. That all right. So, uh, start with chapter one, which I've titled "In the Beginning There Was the Traveler." Now, the reason I titled it that way is in the history of the Shattered Kingdoms, the Traveler, who is one of the main gods of the world, is kind of the major. Uh, what's the word I'm looking for? He's like the major driving force behind like most of the world's major events. And basically, before he arrives in the Shattered Kingdoms in the year 0 AF, which stands for after founding, which is after the founding of the empire, which will rule over the continent for hundreds of years. Basically, before he arrives in 0 AF, nothing really important happens besides people coming to the continent and forming like basic settlements and just starting to settle down and like start some basic farming. But the Shattered Kingdoms, the main continent completely transforms when the traveler arrives in year 0. And he felt that it was his duty to kind of guide the mortal races of the world to greatness in exchange for them worshiping him. And he basically saw this as a mutually beneficial exchange. He had the tools to help these people. He gave them technology that was leaps and bounds ahead of anything that they had, and some of which is still ahead of the more modern day technology found in the Shattered Kingdoms. And basically, he gave them all this in exchange for them making him their main god. And in doing this, he enhances his own power and kind of positions himself as this like savior figure for the mortal races, kind of saving them from barbarity and I can't think of the word here. Barbarity and lack of progress, I guess. Basically, he more or less gives them like guns and modern technology in an era where most people just have sticks and stones. And so obviously he like he gives them a massive jump start to their technological progress and their ability to establish a civilization. And a lot of this technology he gives them improves their lives, allows them to conquer neighboring tribes and countries. And basically, most of the continent falls in a matter of years, except for what is the modern day kingdom of Barul, which doesn't fall for much later. And basically, in this the year 0 AF is when the traveler establishes the empire around its capital of Imperius Capitalis. And in 0 AF, it was just that city, and it was just a collection of huts and a few hundred people. And of course, like by the end of the empire, when it falls, like over 1,000 years later, that city has grown to have from just like a few hundred people to a few 100 million people. So he's kind of really helped them along, so to speak. And I've kind of already mentioned that he's the main god for the empire. I mean, he still allowed people to worship their own gods, as long as, like, for every prayer you said to your god, you say a prayer to the traveler. So that way he could keep tabs on everyone and ensure that he is, like, top dog amongst the gods. And that's basically how he establishes his own power and makes it so no one can really oppose him, and establish his empire, which lasts for like over 1,000 years. They're just kind of the main political force in the world for most of the world's history. And that pretty much brings us to the end of chapter 1. Now we're going to have a bit of a discussion between me and Madeline just to make sure that I got all the main points across, that I didn't like skip over anything, and try to clear up anything that was unclear. So do you have any questions on chapter 1, Madeline?
I'm wondering when in this time frame did he make changelings?
All right, that is a excellent question. I think changelings are probably made somewhere between 0 AF and maybe like 1 or 2 AF. Like, it's very early on, I would say, in the history of the Shattered Kingdoms. I think changelings were originally viewed as the traveler's most devout servants, and they were basically given this gift to change their form so that they could infiltrate other cities, other towns, other tribes, other clans, whatever, and try and build up a following around the traveler so they'd be that much easier to integrate or conquer whatever the situation required. So I think changelings have been around in the world more or less just as long as the Empire has. Does that answer your question?
He tried to kill the other gods too, right? Or am I misremembering that?
He didn't necessarily try to kill the other gods. He just, I don't think he ever really tried to kill the other gods. That was more of Tyrion who had that idea, and we'll get to him later on when he becomes the major political force and world-changing person that he is. But I think the Traveler, I think he just always was focused on making sure that he had the most power.
Yeah,
Like
so that's why the other gods hate him?
that, yeah, that's why the other gods hate
Okay.
him. Like, he wants to make sure that he's always the most powerful. He doesn't care about like a balance of power or anything like that. He just cares about being top dog of the gods. If a god gets out of line, sure, he'll kill that god and make sure that they don't pose a threat to him. But he's not like Tyrion level, I'm going to kill all the gods and make myself the single god so I can rule over the world with impunity. Like, he's not that level. Like, I think his views inspired Tyrion to that point, but the Traveler himself wasn't for murdering the other gods. I don't think. Of course, I'm just a mortal. I can't adequately analyze the motivation of gods, even though I
I
made
mean,
them.
yeah, this is, I mean,
Yeah,
technically D&D one, but you made this version of him.
yeah. I mean, I made this version of the Traveler. Yes. I mean, he's. I imagine he's considerably more power hungry than he is in normal D&D because he was kind of top dog for 1,000 years.
Yeah,
And
I
that
know to
was
do
his
it.
main goal, was keeping that power. So I imagine gods are probably similar to people in that once you have power, the one thing you fear the most is losing that power.
Power corrupts.
Yeah, power
Mm-hmm.
corrupts, and absolute power corrupts absolutely, I believe is the
Yep.
saying.
Yeah.
Any other questions that you have for me, Madeline?
I had one about it. Oh, how big is the Shattered Kingdoms?
Uh,
Because You said the one city had hundreds of millions, right?
Yeah, that is right before it gets destroyed in the Civil War that happened years
Yeah,
before the main campaign that we had
yeah.
before we.
I'm wondering how big this continent is because the U.S. population is hundreds of millions.
Yeah, I mean
So
this
is
is
that
like the massive like urban metropolis of the world basically. Like this is where everything built out from. I
yes,
think
I'm just
the
wondering how
popula
big this city is.
this continent
No, city.
the city it's probably like a few hundred miles probably. Like it is a large city. Like it is probably the size of like a few of our like smaller states in the US. Uh
City is just a force of nature.
yeah, it's a big city
So
that
that's not
has
a city.
yeah.
That's its own country.
Yeah, it is basically like a country more or less. But yeah, it's a big city. There's a few 100 million people living in it, and kind of concentrated around that area in what will end up becoming the exclusion zone later on in history, or the history of the Shattered Kingdoms at least. And that area it's the highest population density of the continent. There's about 1 billion people in total in that area, which is like obscene. Because that whole
They must,
area. Sorry.
they must have. I
What?
said that must be. I said
Sorry.
that it must be very crowded
Yes, it is very crowded. It's basically like metropolises. And
on
then
drugs.
yeah, metropolises on drugs, and then it's literally like cities in between those metropolises. Like there's like the main city areas that are just like massive, like middle age, Middle Ages kind of skyscrapers that are like held up by magic. And then in between all of those is like little villages, and then farms in between those. Like there is no land that goes unused in this area. So it is like the most populated and most developed area of the continent. It's like all the wealth is flowing to here because it's the capital. It's where all the people's taxes are going, and it's like where everyone who wants to be somebody goes to. So it's kind of natural that it becomes this obscenely overpopulated, overdeveloped place of the continent. I think by the time of the Civil War, which isn't for quite a few more chapters, I think the population of the continent is probably, I think, like 4 or 5 billion or something like that. I
Wow.
think I might have wrote that down somewhere, but it's in the population at least is in the billions because the Civil War itself will end up killing 1 billion people, and there's a reason why that death count is so high, which we will get to. I I think that's like chapter 7 or 8, so we got a while. So you guys have something to look forward to. Yeah. We all have something to
Yeah.
look forward to then. Finding out how a single war ends up killing 1 billion people.
Oh, I mean that happens all the time.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's never happened, like, in real life. At least not to that level.
I meant like people dying. It
Oh,
happens all the time, and if the population is this large, it would be statistically
yeah.
likely that it would.
Yeah, that is true.
Yeah.
But, I mean, that is, like, at that time, it's, like, almost like a fourth of the population. So that would be, like,
Yeah.
that'd be, like, if if our group was in a room and then like me and you were shot. So I think we have about almost 8 people, I think. Ish. There's what?
Tunix, Jeremy, Joshua, Jonathan, Lance, me.
I think we have
That's
like
7.
7 or something like that. How many do we have?
Yeah, 7.
Yeah, so it's basically like if me and you, like in our group, me and you died. That's like the level of how many people die in this war. So,
I think it's rude that I got killed.
well, you're in
Not
this
rude
you're
that
in
you
this
said it. I'm just like,
podcast, so
man, why did I get targeted?
because you're in this podcast as
Rude.
well. You're along for the ride.
Man, what did I do to this killer? Jeez.
Um, I don't. Maybe he wanted to see your art and you didn't show it to him. I don't know.
Post some art online. He can look it up himself.
I mean, you are like a pretty good artist.
Eh.
Yeah. We will probably have some form of art in future podcasts like this, so you all will be able to judge just exactly how good Madeline is at art.
You
Personally,
don't judge.
okay, yeah, don't judge, I guess, but I mean,
Co- uh,
personally, I think
constructive
she's like a
criticism.
master at art.
Oh, never mind.
Sorry, what?
I said constructive
Yeah,
criticism if you have to say something.
yeah, constructive criticism. If there's anything worse than that, I will delete your comment.
Oh, okay.
So yeah, constructive criticism is okay. Praise is um praised, I guess. I will
Praise is
praise the praise.
appreciated.
Yeah, praise is appreciated. But yeah, Madeline's like a master artist, in my
Hmm.
opinion. I mean, hey, you've seen my art. My standards are not that high.
That's fair.
Before you get all modest. My standards are not that high.
That's fair. You,
Uh,
you got me there. You
yeah.
got me.
Yeah, you've seen my art. I've subjected you to that torture. Uh,
I wouldn't call it torture.
I would.
There's room for improvement.
That you see that listeners, that's the kind of constructive criticism that you want to be giving. There's I part of me wishes you guys could see the art that I showed Madeline, just so you'd be like, okay, yeah, he's pretty shit at art. But then another part is just like, yeah, I don't want them to know how bad I am actually, because I imagine like you're thinking, you have like a picture in your head of how bad I am, and in reality, it's probably like 10 times worse than that. But anyway, tangent on art aside, is there any other questions that you have about chapter 1, Madeline?
My guns.
Guns?
No, I was just saying, why did the traveler think these people need guns?
So I think originally for the lore, this has kind of been I think retconned a little bit to make more sense. I think originally I imagined the traveler he's from like a different world entirely, at least in this setting, where he
Okay.
used to be from a world where people were much more advanced, and he started his life as just like a normal person who, through basically disaster and earning the praise, respect, and worship of millions of people, kind of ascended to godhood. And when his own world gets destroyed, he fled, and he just happened to come to the Shattered Kingdoms, and that's where he arrived. So he's like, okay, I have all these guns with me because this is just like a normal thing for me in my old world. So here, have some guns. But I think it's kind of been retconned a bit now to be that he spent days and weeks trying to think of, all right, how can we help these people wage war on their neighbors? How can we make sure that they can defend themselves to the best of their ability? So in these like days, he creates body armor to keep them safe. And he's like, okay, these guys have spears that they throw and hunt with. Like, what if we have a spear or something that doesn't require any force to use, that like anyone can use, that like maybe even a child could use? And then that
A
thought,
child with a gun.
yeah. So then he's
He's
like,
like,
that,
give
yeah,
the
that
children
pretty
weapons.
much. But basically, that like thought process leads him to developing guns to give to his people. He's no longer my original idea, which is to have him from another world. That's not to say like he's not from another world. It's just that's not like the main uh, how he came up with everything. At least not in the lore as it stands right now. I mean,
Okay.
his these aren't like it's not like he's giving them like machine guns and stuff. He's giving them like the kind of muskets and stuff that are
Give
in
the children machine guns.
yeah, just give all the children of the Shattered Kingdoms AK-47s.
Hey, my one future character that I'm hoping to play, man, that'll really spice up her character.
The Drow girl, the Drow
Yeah.
child. Yeah. Yeah, that'd be I'm imagining I'm trying to imagine that character drawn in kind of your like art style, holding an AK-47, and that is a glorious picture.
And the funny thing is that she's a cleric.
Yes, that makes it so much better.
It'd be like what is it?
Hmm.
Anna from Overwatch.
Ah.
She has those healing bullets.
Oh yeah. I shoot bullets that heal you. That makes total
Yes.
sense.
Yes.
Yeah, that maybe that can be like a one shot because I don't know how I'd balance a campaign where AK-47s are a thing. You
It's a
fine
joke.
with
I
that?
wasn't actually suggesting.
No, this is gonna be
uh,
a one shot now. You've made it official.
I mean, Tyrion was bad enough, but Tyrion with an
Yeah,
AK-47.
Tyrion with an AK-47. Could you? I mean, compared to like some of his attacks, like in the final session of last campaign, I don't think a AK-47 would be much of a step up. So I mean,
I
he
mean, you also have to imagine that most of us have to get close to him in order to
yeah,
fight him.
that is true. I mean, like in the last, like in his final fight, his like abilities, he could basically just like almost kill someone with the snap of his hand.
Oh, we don't want to do spoilers right now. We're still in chapter one.
Okay,
Come
yeah,
on.
we're still in chapter one. I'm sorry.
I'm
Uh,
just saying.
I'm just gonna
You,
say now to all the viewers, I mean listeners. Well, I guess viewers because we are having some background to this, so it should be recording my screen now. I think I'm gonna at least move to the next slide to chapter 2. I mean, we don't have to start talking about it now, but I just realized that for the past 10-15 minutes we've been talking, I've just had the screen on a blank white screen. And I imagine that probably isn't the best thing for a video like
we
this.
forgot. We forgot to write discussion time on these. Hold on. You can.
Yeah,
I'll,
you put that in, so we don't have a repeat of me just completely blanking to the fact that I have my screen on a blank, empty slide. And of course, this is my fault, obviously, because I'm the one who made the PowerPoint. Madeline has edited it, so it's my fault, not.
Well,
If anyone
well,
blames, if there's ever anything wrong with any of these podcasts, like 99.99% of the time it's my fault. Just putting that out there to all the viewers, / listeners, / potential subs. Please sub. We need subs.
/ potential patrons, because we have that now too.
Oh yeah, we have a Patreon. Oh wait. Do I have that link to that posted in the Discord?
You should.
I
think you do.
I think I do. If it's not pinned, we should probably pin it. And if you can find it, maybe put it the last slide of this.
Yeah, I can do that.
Or at least just mention that it's a thing. That way, people know that it's a thing, and maybe.
Well, mentioned it. Check that off. We got
We've
it.
mentioned it. There's a Patreon. Maybe an idea for another shorter podcast would be to go over like the tier rewards. But I think that if we do bother to go over that and don't just like explain that in a document, I think that would probably have to be its own separate podcast. Otherwise, this is going to go on for like 5 hours.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and I as much.
I feel like.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
I feel like we shouldn't. So we probably could list a few of the rules, but not all of them. I mean, people can read. They could go there and find the rest. Just the bigger ones, I think.
Yeah, this bigger it is.
But we'll do that. Yeah, we'll do that later, though.
Yeah, we'll do that in its own like podcast or later, whatever we end up deciding. It's just the bigger the donation, the more that you'll be able to change how the Shattered Kingdom progresses and how the world works. Because some of the larger tiers has ways to just like completely derail any plans that I have, so to speak. Which I mean that's fun to kind of try and work with that, but I don't know. Any final questions on Chapter 1 before we move on, Madeline?
I think I'm good for right now. We should probably move on to Chapter 2.
Yes, we probably should. How long have we been talking, by the way?
I have no idea. I honestly did not keep track. I just know I got off work around 10 and it's now 11:48.
Yeah, I can check the recording. We have currently been talking for 33 minutes and 10 seconds.
And we're only on Chapter 2.
Oh, God. Hopefully, future podcasts won't, at least, lore podcasts won't be as long as this. This one's going to be a bit longer than the others because we are trying to go over, I think, what the hell is, I think like 1,500 years or something like that of the history of this world. So this is our
first one?
Yeah, this is also our first one. We're working out the kinks.
Yeah. You made the Patreon 18 and older?
Did I? Oh. Yeah. Yeah, I think I did just because I'm like, yeah, I don't know if like D&D, like children. Well, the option was make it 18 plus or like make it so you guarantee that it's safe for children.
No, you guys swear a whole bunch. It's not.
Yeah, so it's not as bad as like 18 plus makes it sound. But yeah, I wouldn't say it's child friendly either.
Yeah.
So I mean, we're all nice people. But I mean, sometimes we do tend to like swear like sailors.
Speak for yourself.
Yeah, I guess. I mean, I used to like never swear at all, but I think I think I'm probably one of the worst ones. Is that accurate or no?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, let's be fair, I play considerably more characters than anyone else, so I'm gonna blame it on that. Anyway, let's move on to chapter 2 before we spend the first hour not getting past the first chapter mark. That I could totally see that happening.
Yeah. Okay.
Alright.
Go on. Chapter 2. No distractions.
Alright. Chapter
Go.
2, no distractions. So chapter 2 I titled Establishing a Dynasty. And basically, this is when the traveler is consolidating his control over the Shattered Kingdoms, the main continent, and the Empire. So basically, he realizes that he can't keep a direct control of the Empire. He needs some like a mortal to do that for him. So he basically has kids and establishes the Imperial dynasty, which were all originally at least ASMR, who were ended up being his most devout followers, and they basically all of his ASMR were either the royal family or like nobles in the empire. At the beginning of the empire, he had a lot of ASMR. I mean, the power kind of went to his head, so he probably had too much fun, is what I'm saying there. But anyway, main point, the imperial family was ASMR of the traveler, very loyal to him, and when the empire is firmly established and the only enemy to their power is Barul, basically, Traveler's like, okay, I'm done here. You've got this. I'm now going to consolidate my power in the realm of the gods and basically do my own shit. Just remember these words, always one step forward, and you'll be good. Bye. And basically just disappears from view on the mortal plane for a long time, and basically just leaves the Empire in the care of his children, his ASMR, and they rule the Empire decently for about 1,000 years. I say decently because, I mean, towards the beginning, it was like a golden age for the Empire, but towards that like 1,000 year mark, things kind of went to shit, so to speak. And I think I accidentally skipped a slide there. Oh,
You did.
and okay. Eventually, as the years went on, the ASMR blood in the royal family, the imperial line, it would lessen because they would marry humans instead of fellow ASMR. There wasn't that many of them, and
And they're technically, if they're all ASMR, they'd all be family anyway.
yeah, I mean, I think towards like the first 200, 300 years of the empire, I think we're looking at like a basically like Habsburg situation. If any history nerd will get that.
But
Basically,
you seem to enjoy the joke.
yeah, I do. Well, the Habsburgs were the like Austrian and Spanish royal family that
Okay, I understand. Yeah, you said royal family, and I'm like, oh, I
yeah,
understand. Got it.
I think like they had, I think it was what, like 16 generations of incest or something like that. Basically they had it to like a ridiculous level, to the it was like the Spanish king who was like born with like a heart the size of like a walnut. Um, oh god, what other health problems did he have? Half a lung, and okay, he had to have like a support for his neck, so he could like look forward because he couldn't hold his head up. I don't. Basically, Habsburgs, lots of incest. Uh, they have a genetic trait, the Habsburg chin, named after them because of that coming about from all their incest. It's basically like a large chin that I wish that I had actually I have my access to my screen. I can pull up a picture of this.
I'm
Haps
sure I can see it.
what?
I can't see your screen. I can't see it.
Habsburg jaw. Let's yeah, this looks like the best picture of the Habsburg jaw. Um I'm gonna send this to you via Discord real quick.
I looked it up. It's fine.
Yeah,
Oh, I see.
yeah. The, it's worth mentioning that that wasn't a thing until the Habsburgs came along. So
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So basically, Habsburgs, uh, imperial family, both of them, lots of incest, and at least the empire, their imperial family was like, okay, we can't do this anymore. Like, we need to marry outside the family. So they do that, and that kind of leads to the lessening of the ASMR blood. And as that happens, they kind of enjoy shorter lives. They're no longer as long lived as they used to be. And they generally, the quality of their leadership seems to decline. At least none of them are like batshit crazy as some of the more inbred ASMR that were born during this period. But for the most part, despite some mishaps and some minor skirmishes and the war with Brule, which during this time period is when Brule finally falls, when like 100 imperial legions are assembled and are all just basically marched into Brule and just exterminate anyone in the area. Brule was basically the last holdout in the continent, and it had everyone who didn't want to be a part of the empire. It contained people who had access to the same technologies as the empire, imperial defectors, and what have you, like inbred emperors who ran off. So it's not like this is people with sticks and stones holding off a massively technologically superior empire. In terms of technology and whatnot, they're pretty even. The empire definitely had a monopoly on manpower, but it wasn't. The war wasn't as one-sided as you would originally think. And basically, this uh, war ends up shaping what Barul will be in the future, in that most of the people who end up living there are the troops who went in there to eliminate the original inhabitants of the area. So then it's kind of inhabited by all these former legionnaires who value loyalty to the empire above all else, and who have a strong sense of duty, honor, and value soldiering over everything else. So then that'll contribute to Brutal's military history and its status as one of the major military powers throughout the history of the Shattered Kingdoms. Basically, this event, while so far back in the timeline compared to like where the events of our main podcast series are happening, it has a direct effect on that time itself. Because if this didn't happen, Brule in modern day, when the party is on their campaign, they wouldn't be as militaristic and expansionist as they are now if this had never happened. So if this had never happened, they'd just be like normal imperial citizens, and they wouldn't be as driven to conquer everything and establish their own empire, more or less. I think that pretty much does it for chapter 2, so we are now on discussion time. Any questions on chapter 2, Madeline?
So I'm guessing around this time is when the changelings lost favor with the traveler because the ASMR became his most devout, right?
Yes. And
All right.
the changelings were kind of jealous of that because they're like, okay, we just won you this empire. We saved you. We saved the lives of like thousands, if not millions, of your followers through our actions. And now you're giving all your favor to these noobs. You're giving all this favor to your kids and not us. What the hell? Come on,
I mean,
dude.
technically, they are his kids in a way too, since he created them.
Yeah, I mean,
so
they are
like
kind of his kids.
siblings
So like,
fighting over
yeah,
mom's favorites.
yeah, that's pretty much what this is like. It's like, okay, we see who your favorite child is.
Yeah.
It's clearly not us, your firstborn.
Mm-hmm.
We're the, I guess you just see us as like the shitty first, and you're like perfect second child. Ugh.
Test run.
Yeah, we're just a test run, you bastard.
Yeah.
So yeah,
I mean, he
that
is kind of he's a jerk. Yeah.
yeah, the traveler does kind of end up being a jerk. I feel like your feelings on the traveler might be affected by the fact that last campaign you were a changeling.
Fair. We actually met him.
Yeah.
He was worse than I imagined him to be.
Yes,
So
that is fair. That is absolutely fair because I
originally thought my character's view on him was just biased and that he actually wouldn't be that bad.
Yeah. And then
But then he actually
I
was.
made him as bad as I could make him. Is kind of what happened.
Yeah.
So I mean, like,
No, I mean,
I
he
could have.
wasn't bad. He was just kind of spoiled.
Yeah. I mean, the only ways I really could have done him is like he's super nice and is like very caring, or I could make him like a total dick. And I'm like, okay, this guy is the father of the BBEG who's trying to kill all the gods and has the blood of millions of people on his hands. Like, how can this guy be super nice? I guess maybe he could have gone through like a bunch of character development and became that over time, but at the time, I'm like, okay, he's evil. Or not evil. He's just a dick. I wouldn't say he's evil per se. He's definitely in a very gray area.
He's neutral. He just cares about himself.
Yeah, he cares about himself. Because he's neglected his duties to the changelings at least. Because once they fell out of favor, they no longer had his protection really. So people are like, oh, you can change into other people. You could, in theory, like kill me, take my appearance, and live my life. Okay, I don't like that. You need to die. Basically, like if he had actually done his job and his duty to change lanes, there wouldn't be as much persecution against them in the Shattered Kingdoms. But, I mean, it's gotten better now that there's a changeling who's basically one of the most powerful people in the continent, if not the most powerful person in the continent. Because Tien, Madeline's character in the last campaign, is pretty much the most powerful person in the world, I'd say.
Anyway,
what is your opinion on that?
I mean, she is a rogue mastermind after all, so I feel
Like, do you think
it was.
she's the most powerful person on the continent, though?
I mean, like politically, she has a lot of what's the term? Fingers in
Clout?
pies.
Oh, I was gonna say she has a
Yeah,
lot of
she has.
political clout, but
Yeah, and it's funny because most of it was kind of just handed to her. She didn't really
yeah, it was kind
intend.
of. I mean, yeah, she was kind of given like leadership. Well, you did save Merrick, the leader of the
Yeah, I
organization's
saved
life.
Merrick.
So he's like,
Yeah,
okay, you've always been like my number one. So why don't you
yeah.
take this when I die? And then it's like, okay, over the course of your quest, you realize that you are a descendant of the royal family that used to have a kingdom where the Confederacy.
Spoilers.
Oh, okay.
How's that? It comes in later chapters. You gotta save these things.
Damn. Yeah. Just for reference to the viewers, I am terrible at not spoiling things. You will hopefully get used to this.
If I just start making noises like that, that means you're about to say some major spoilers, and you should probably not say it.
All right, make the sound again so I can like
Well, I
familiarize
was just me
myself.
saying whoa, 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 whoa,
Okay,
whoa,
whoa, whoa,
whoa,
whoa, whoa,
over
whoa,
and
whoa.
over.
Okay.
Yeah, like like whoa, but
Yeah.
like over and over.
Yeah, I have spoiled many a thing over the.
Yeah,
All right.
I'm
Any
your censor.
other? Yeah. Basically, if it wasn't for Madeline, this whole thing would just be a dumpster fire.
No, I feel like I've been distracting you. Like I said,
You've
no
distracted
distractions, but
me,
now,
but like, imagine how much worse this would be if you weren't here.
well, I mean, I said no distractions, then because of me, you went off on the
The like art
well,
tangents and the
no,
changeling
well,
tangents, or the.
no, I was no. Those I don't know. I don't know why you started talking about the art.
I
I
don't
don't even
know.
remember. But
I,
the changeling thing wasn't a tangent. That was a question, and you were answering
okay.
it.
Well, I think the
But
art
I meant
thing
the
was I was
incest thing
saying that you
later in the middle.
were good at art, and then it just kind of like blew up from
Well,
there.
okay, hold on. I said you said that,
Yeah.
but I said no distractions.
Okay.
And then I asked a question or said something, and then in the middle of your notes, and you went off on the incest and the royal Spanish family thing.
Yeah. It's mostly Austrian. It's like the Spanish and Austrian, but it's mostly Austrian.
It was the Spanish king that had the
Yeah.
issue.
But it was originally the family is originally from Austria, and their last like royal family member was an Austrian who died
And
towards the end of World War One. These people were in
yeah,
power
yeah.
for a long time.
I mean, I believe you, but see what I mean? I bring them up, and then there we go again.
Yeah. Well, could you imagine? I don't think I'd be able to do this without you though, because then it'd just be me like talking to myself, and then like, that's boring.
Sure. Okay.
All right. Next
Speaking of
question.
boring, though, we should probably continue on with the actual thing.
Okay. No more questions on chapter 2.
It's mostly just he starts having kids. Kids have kids,
Yep.
and then they take over Burl.
Yep. That's pretty much
The
this.
Confederacy's what was the Confederacy's original name?
That is a good question. What do you want the Confederacy's original name to be, since you are the descendant of the royal family?
To think about that. You saw how long it took me to come up with all the other names.
Well, you came up with them faster than I would have been able to, but move on to chapter 3, or do you have another question?
I think I'm good.
All right, let's move on to chapter 3 because I think we're probably approaching the hour mark.
Oh, jeez.
I can check,
This might have to be 2 different episodes just for these 10 chapters.
maybe. As long as this doesn't go longer than our actual session, I think we can probably get away with having this be one episode. Maybe.
We better get going then.
Yeah. All right.
Go.
All right. Chapter 3. Darker times are coming, and they did come. Okay. So basically, that didn't sound as bad as in my head. So basically, the golden age in the last chapter was not gonna last forever. And by the year 750 AF, basically 750 years after the traveler came and established the empire was starting to decline. I mean, it wasn't in terrible state by 750. This is just when it started to kind of go downhill. This is where the empire peaked. It was still a powerhouse for maybe 100, 200 years after it starts its decline. But this is where it starts to go downhill. I mean, it was a continent-spanning empire. They controlled everything. But by the year 1000, it's basically in dire straits. We need to act now, or this whole thing is going to implode. Level of we need to do something. And basically, the empire starts to lose influence in some of its more further afield territories, with the exception of Barul, which has always been, after its conquest, the most staunchly loyal imperial province. Towards the end, Brule was more loyal than the capital of the empire itself. That's how hardline and dedicated these people of Brule were. And as the empire is losing its grasp over these territories, the emperors are starting to run into the problem of they're just simply not having kids, or at least not as many as they used to. And this starts to become a problem as determining the next heir becomes increasingly more difficult. Whereas before it used to be okay, now it's the son of the last emperor. Now it's okay, we need to research family lineages to determine if it's the third cousin of the emperor twice removed, or the third cousin of the emperor who may or may not be twice or 3 times removed. Yeah, it basically gets terrible. They spend hundreds of hours just trying to determine, all right, who's the next emperor? We need to figure this out. And that is basically time that could have been spent trying to solidify their position and try and slow the decline that has already started 250 years ago. But a considerable amount of their bureaucracy is now just completely dedicated to determining who is the next emperor. Because if we are ever in a situation where we don't have an emperor, we have no idea what we're going to do. Our whole political system, our whole empire, our whole way of life revolves around having an emperor. If we don't have one, everything is going to collapse. And that is kind of what happens. but not before the empire kind of gets a brief respite from the massive decline it's been suffering in the past 250 years, when the last good emperor ascended the throne, and his name would be Nicolaus the First, and he was basically one of the more popular emperors. He's known for I think he was responsible for the expedition that secured the Isles in Theria, which is the last bit of like uncolonized, uninhabited land within reach of the continent at that point. So he expanded the empire. He was a major patron of the arts because he was a bard himself. So he kind of slows the decline and kind of starts to bring the empire back to what it was. And he starts to get some of the further afield territories back in the fold. People who were starting to whisper about independence no longer do. But then the year 1100 arrives and he dies. Normally this wouldn't be that big of an issue. Emperors die all the time. Only he didn't have any kids. And try as they might, no one could find anyone who was related to him. Then that's when things really go to hell. But that is the end of chapter 3, and we're back to discussion time again. So Madeline can say something and ask questions. All right.
Were you on the PowerPoint pages?
Yeah, sorry, did I miss something?
No, I just wondering because your icon showed you still at the discussion time. So I was like, is he here or is he just...
I'm at discussion time slide 10.
Hold on. Hold on, my roommate's cat.
Technical difficulties. Cat difficulties.
Sorry, my roommate's cat burst into my room and then started eating my cat's food.
That's cats for you.
Yep.
Anyway, yeah, I'm going through the slides. I'm currently on discussion time, slide 10, so I'm kind of keeping track of like where we are.
I guess Google Docs is just messing up because it's showing your icon on two different places.
Yeah, I guess it is.
Okay,
any questions on chapter 3?
I mean, not really. The last good emperor, he dies. No one knows what to do after that. You know,
Yep.
No heirs, no one related to him.
Yep, and that's pretty much chapter 3 in a nutshell.
Did you name him Nicholas after Nicus?
No, I named him Nicklaus because my full name is Nicholas, and I thought Niklaus sounded like Nicholas, or like a Germanized version of Nicholas.
Did you name Nicus after yourself?
Yes. To be fair, though, Nicus was my first ever D&D character that I just happened to like port over into this campaign because I ported him into the first bit that we're not allowed to talk about because we don't own the rights to that, where I was like, okay, this would be a perfect time to like throw in my own character. Most of this is scripted and not my own. So this would be a nice time to bring in something that I made myself. And what better way to do that than bringing in Nicus?
I mean, I get that. I just noticed their names are similar, so I was trying to see if there was a connection, and I found the connection.
Yeah, the connection is I think too highly of myself and name people after me.
I mean, that's fair. You are the creator of all the NPCs.
Yeah, so. That is true. I mean, there's like hundreds of NPCs, and I've only named like 2 after myself, so...
Well, most of the NPCs. Let's just...
Yeah.
We made our own backstory ones.
Yeah. Yeah, you made your own backstory NPCs. I've made most of the NPCs. And if you become a patron, you can create your own NPCs. You might change the whole flow of the story. Who knows? Check out our
Depending on which
Patreon.
tier.
Yeah.
Depending on the tier.
Yeah.
It's not just every tier you get to make.
Yeah, it's depending on the tier. It's the more higher ones. We're still fleshing out exactly what you get for each tier. Currently, I think we have tiers up to $50, somewhat fleshed out. I don't think we're going to go much higher than that. I think we might have eventually like a $100 like super tier where you're.
What do we even do for that?
I have no idea. But you have to remember, like, we're splitting this between like 7 people.
Yeah, I know. I'm just trying to think what the reward even be.
Yeah,
We're guest starring.
like, yeah, you definitely be guest starring as much as you want. You'd be able to like create your own antagonist, because I think one of the lower tiers had that.
I wouldn't say guest star however many times you
Yeah, you
want.
guest star as many times as you want. You could create.
That means they'd basically be another member of the
Yeah, you
campaign.
basically be another
And
member
then
of the
we have to pay
campaign.
them.
I have an idea.
I was saying, how about we don't do that?
Yeah. Oh. Okay.
Not let's do that. I'm saying that would be a bit chaotic if we have like 20 people doing that and then they're
Yeah.
all wanting to
Yeah.
be.
That's fair. We'll probably end up removing that, but I have an idea though for what we can do for like $100. So basically, at this
Okay.
point, the Shattered Kingdoms has one continent, and there may or may not be another continent coming into the picture over the course of this current campaign. Now, I don't know how familiar you people, all you listeners are with like our own geography, but there is considerably more than one continent on Earth. So I was thinking,
What?
I'm not trying to be insulting, but I'm saying like you could design your own
No, I was
continent
just
is what I'm saying for like
saying,
$100. You can design your own continent, its lore, religion, what it's about, what's in it, how it relates to the rest of the world, and basically like work with me to create like a part of the Shattered Kingdoms world that would be explored in future campaigns or future storylines. Basically, you'd help me create part of the story, and part of you would permanently be a part of the Shattered Kingdoms world. I think that is definitely something to put in that like $100 tier reward part.
yeah.
I feel like that's giving someone a lot of power, and it's a nice reward. So then you can look back like years from now when we have hundreds of podcasts and are world famous, when we've surpassed Critical Role. Yeah, that's never gonna happen. But basically like years from now when we've made like a total of $1 from ad revenue, you can look back at our hundreds of podcasts and say, I helped make that. That's me. All that world building, those NPCs, those kingdoms, those countries, they exist because of me. I think that would be a good feeling to have personally. Be like, okay, I contributed. This world wouldn't be what it is without me. I don't know. I think that'd be a good reward. How about you, Madeline?
Sure. We kind of went on a tangent again, though.
Yes, I did. That is my specialty. Let's go on to chapter 4 then, since we don't seem to have any questions on chapter 3.
I mean, that one's pretty basic, you
Yeah,
know.
chapter 3 was kind of basic, and we did go on a tangent, so I guess let's move on. Chapter 4, Shadow Wars and Reunification. It's basically in the 5 years after Nicolaus died, no fewer than 500 people would attempt to seize the throne over the course of that 5 years. And during those 5 years, 100 of them would actually succeed. So no one really rules very long during this time. So I mean, 5 years. That's how many? How many days is that, Madeline?
Oh man, 5 times 365.
Why don't you pull up a calculator while I continue talking?
1,830? No, 25?
So basically, if that was divided equally, each one of these guys would be emperor for like 10 days. So basically, like, emperors of the week is what these guys are. And as I'm pretty sure you all can imagine, that isn't great for stability. And it isn't great for stability where, like, 1 week, there's one emperor who's...
It was about 20 days.
Yeah, okay, it's about 20 days between all...
About 2 weeks, or 3 weeks.
Okay, yeah, so it's still, like, less than a month. These guys rule for less than a month each. And of course, that's if it was divided equally, it's not. Some of them rule for a bit longer than that. Some of them, like, last only, like, a few days, some a few hours.
Some don't survive the coronation.
Yep, pretty much. So, yeah, in some cases, it's like, okay, I'm being coronated. My right-hand man just stabbed me in the throat, put the crown on his own head before my third in command shot him with a crossbow, and then put the crown on his head, and so on. Yeah, it gets ridiculous pretty quickly, and the Empire falls into chaos. Its hundreds of legions either disband or turn to banditry because there's no one to pay them. Like, the government isn't stable enough to pay them. Because it was kind of the tradition of the empire that when a new emperor came to power, they'd release new currency so that it'd be their face on the coins and whatnot. So then you couldn't do that if the person in charge is only ruling for a week. And I mean, by the time that really became an issue, supply lines and the whole government basically fell apart anyway. So the legions are now just basically like roving warlords who carve out their own territory. And that's kind of what eventually causes the modern day borders of the kingdoms to come about, is like where these warlords like stake their claims and stuff like that. 'Cause, I mean, hundreds, if not millions, like at least thousands, if not millions, of people die during this period because there's no law, there's no order. I mean, you can't just, like, if someone kills your brother, you can't just take them to the court because the court's no longer there. No one's paying the judges or the clerks or whoever else works there. If someone kills your brother or whatever, you have to take justice into your own hands, and then it just turns into a mess, and vigilante violence just all goes to hell. And that doesn't matter anyway, because then the legion that turned to banditry that's a few miles off decides to raid your village and kills you and all your loved ones. It's a bad time. And this isn't even the worst that it gets. Oh no. The continent is in for much, much worse. And basically, as I kind of mentioned before, the warlords, like the old imperial legionary captains, kind of build their own power bases around the support of their legions. They start extorting money from the local populace so they can actually pay their legions, which kind of helps provide somewhat some stability. Now the legions are at least getting paid, so they're not destroying towns and looting towns to get their money. And probably the worst thing for the empire that happens in this period is the independence movements that break out. And the most notable and the most strong and prosperous kingdom that tries to declare independence is the kingdom of Nolave, which over the years of the decline of the empire, this province became more and more self-sufficient, didn't rely on the imperial legions to give it security, and it basically, by the time all this happened, it was more or less independent already. Like, the only thing that it did for the empire was pay its taxes and send some of its people for the legions. Like, they really did not benefit too much from the empire besides being able to trade with the other provinces. Like, Nolave didn't really benefit from its relationship with the empire, and its king was like, okay, my people are suffering from this total shitstorm that the empire's turned into. We're going to declare independence. We're not going to listen to the crazy emperor of the week. Because if we do whatever he says, the next week the guy after him will say to do the exact opposite thing. So we're just going to leave all this stuff behind and form our own kingdom. If anyone else wants to join us, the more the merrier. And that whole approach really angered the empire, as if Nolave was able to assert its independence, what's stopping all the provinces from saying, we don't need you, we're going our own way? And that's kind of when most of the people in the empire would realize that this is the beginning of the end for the empire. And I guess I underestimated the number of people who died in these shadow wars, as I've called them, as apparently 10 million people would die in these wars over the imperial throne. And it's basically, 'cause everyone and their cousin vied for the throne. It was ridiculous. Anyone who had any kind of claim to the throne, no matter how far-fetched or how fabricated, if they had any basis to sit on that throne, they were going to try to. And eventually, the situation would kind of stabilize, and there'd be a temporary peace established when the last ever emperor to sit upon the imperial throne assumed power and began to reunify the empire under his command. And this emperor would become known as Tyrion the Tyrant. And I can't go into more detail about him without spoilers.
Boo.
Yes.
Boo him.
The Madeline and the rest of the party have a lot of reason to hate good old Mr. Tyrion the Tyrant. He has very much earned that name, the Tyrant. He is basically a BBEG. I hope that isn't too much of a spoiler. As that.
Hold on.
All right.
I have an idea.
Okay.
No, you go ahead. I'm just doing my thing. You go ahead.
I was going to start discussion time, but.
Oh no! Don't do that yet.
Okay. Ignore the what slide I am, dear viewers. I will continue talking about the Empire while Madeline does whatever Madeline does. Basically, Tyrion, he's basically being set up to be the BBEG here, which is a role that he fulfills nicely.
All right, there you go.
Okay, what did you do? Oh, okay, that didn't update for me right away. It seems to me like you're trying to paint me as the bad guy. You are the bad. Yeah, that is true. He is the bad guy. Like he has the blood of millions of people on his hands, and you'll see in the next few chapters what I mean. So yeah, he is the bad guy, and Madeline, it is discussion time unless there's something else that you need to do before we start discussion time.
Um,
Do you have any?
did anyone from the Confederacy take the throne?
I think probably like one of the first people to try to take the throne probably would have been someone from the Confederacy, because the ruling family of the Confederacy was changelings. So like, okay, we have a claim to this because we are kind of the children of the traveler. If there's no more ASMR left, then I think it's obvious that we're next in line. So we're gonna stake our claim. So there's at least one, maybe I think at it's somewhere between 1 and a dozen changelings will vie for the throne over these 5 years.
Good.
So I don't know
My
how. I think, yeah, I feel like if it's over a dozen, that's probably too many, because then we might be going into like uh Johnny the peasant changeling. No, Caleb the peasant changeling is trying to vie for the throne on the simple fact.
excuse me.
What?
Excuse me. Did you just throw a 2-syllable name at
All
me?
right,
Excuse me.
Cal the changeling peasant.
Th-
Is that better?
Thank you.
Cal? Okay.
Thank you.
So
Yes, thank
Cal
you.
the
A
changeling.
changeling with a two-syllable
I'm
name.
sorry. Cal the changeling peasant tries to overthrow the empire, become emperor, because of the simple fact that he heard someone say once that as a changeling, he has some sort of connection to the traveler. Like the it's basically if the whole, more or less the whole royal family of the Confederacy tried to vie for the throne at one point or the other. I think it's only towards the end, when a lot of them died trying to do this, that they were like, okay, let's not.
Makes
Because
sense.
I think probably the one that definitely did not try to get the throne would have been Tin's ancestor. The one
Yeah.
that from the flashback.
Spoilers. Spoilers.
Yep.
Whoa, 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 whoa.
Yep. But yeah, you know who I'm talking about. That one.
Yeah.
That one definitely did not vie for the throne. Imagine her
Mhm.
parents were probably killed trying to do that. And she had rulership of her deteriorating country thrust upon her. So she's like, okay, I can't do this. I'm struggling
I
to rule.
said whoa.
What?
I said whoa, 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 and you're still going.
Okay. But I didn't really like go into like story I just started talking about like her situation at that point. I'm sorry.
Well, yeah, that's not story spoilers. That just is something in a later chapter.
Okay. All right. That's
Yeah.
actually questions.
I already asked my first question.
And the changelings vying for the throne, which I answered as yes. About a dozen of them did.
I'm trying to think. Um, when does Ignis's ancestor and Xander's ancestor come into play? I know they were there for that final battle.
Well, Ignis's ancestor is the one who declares Nolave independent. So
Okay,
he
okay,
is the
I
one
see.
who uh kind of forces I don't know, I guess I shouldn't say force. He's kind of the one that pushes Tyrion to kind of take the throne for himself. Because Tyrion's like, okay, a huge part of our empire is trying to declare independence. I need to do something. And there is a reason why Tyrion has more of a desire to do that, and why Tyrion absolutely hates Dragonborn, but that would be spoilers for stuff that is actually going to be coming up in the campaign that we're in now, so I'm going to shut up on that. As hard as that
Yeah.
is for me. As for Xander, probably around the same time. Xander's ancestor, I imagine, would have been a hero to the people around Origin Root, and he's kind of coming to prominence here as he manages to secure his hometown and the surrounding villages from the bandits and legionnaires turned bandits. So he manages to secure that area, kind of becomes the more or less de facto king of that general area. So he's coming into play around that time.
Okay.
Let's see, I think Jonathan's ancestors, or at least his like dwarf family, they're trying to arrange to declare independence alongside Nalave. His family, well, his like adopted family, that's what they're doing, trying to declare independence. His like actual like orc family that we never met, and he never met, they're like raiding the countryside, making everything worse for everyone. So that's when they play a part. And at this point,
Okay.
Cylon's ancestor is in hiding with his mother, I think.
Okay.
So I think that is everyone.
Yes.
Because Tin's ancestor is becoming ruler at this point and struggling with that.
I don't. No, she's not ruler yet.
Okay, she's not quite ruler yet,
That's
but
chapter 5. Yeah.
her parents are soon going to be killed, and then she's gonna become ruler.
Well, this is whoa. This is next
Yeah,
chapter.
this
Hold
is
on.
next chapter.
Hold your horses.
Yep, that's next chapter. Any last questions before I move on to next chapter?
If I ask any more, I'm afraid you're just gonna spoil the rest
Just
of the.
spoil everything. Okay. All right, next chapter, which I've titled Treason, Trouble, and Tyranny. I've been talking a lot, so I'm just going to take a drink of water before I read this for everyone. Okay, sorry about that. It's unprofessional, but I needed that.
Hey, man. People do it all the time.
All right. So during this time period, Tyrion is securing his position. He does so very easily. He basically presents himself as the rightful emperor, and he gets a lot of the military leaders on his side, as he is like the only known ASMR of the Traveler known to exist at this point. And basically, the Traveler has Tyrion to try and fix this shit show that is the Empire at this point. And so he's basically able to show everyone, like, hey, look, I'm an ASMR. I'm the son of the Traveler. It's my destiny to save the Empire. Follow me. And this works for a lot of people. Because at this point, a lot of people lost hope. He becomes the symbol of hope for them. And doesn't last very long, as he starts to become more and more of a tyrant over the years. But he is definitely, in these early stages, seen by the faithful of the traveler as the savior, messiah figure. And in some cases, in a more limited scope, he's actually seen as like a god figure. And during this time is when the cult of Tyrion is established, which is kind of a group of followers of the Traveler who are like, okay, I think it's clear that the Traveler has abandoned us. Tyrion is clearly, well, he has given us Tyrion. Tyrion will show us the way. Tyrion will save us. We must follow Tyrion to the end and back. We must do everything to support him. Without him, we are nothing. Without Tyrion, there is no empire. Without the empire, the world is nothing. Basically, he kind of inspires a radical cult to kind of follow him. And, well, he doesn't really like promote it. It does gain followers throughout this period and over the years. And within a year of him sitting upon the throne, any Imperial Legion that wasn't willing to join him is gone. Either dead, fled, or disbanded. There is no in between here. Any kingdom that had declared independence during this time either willingly rejoined the Empire as it's become more stable under Tyrion's rule, or the legions went in and reasserted their authority. And kind of a unique thing is he actually recognized the independence of the Confederacy with a promise from its king that he would marry the king's daughter and basically form like a marital union / alliance between the Confederacy and the Empire. And that would be Tyn's ancestor, who's being offered up to Tyrion here. Although the king kind of ends up having a fallout with Tyrion. Tyrion kind of has him burned alive. It's not good. Tyrion may or may not have ended up kidnapping Tyn's ancestor. It was fun times. Very fun times. As long as you weren't a member of the Confederacy's royal family. Or anyone who's not Tyrion.
This is chapter 6 stuff.
Is it?
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. Didn't mean to spoil that. It just was mentioned here, so I thought I'd bring it up. But
it's her marriage.
Yeah. Well, it was
her arranged marriage is mentioned.
Yeah,
but...
it was arranged marriage, and then I just kind of went on about that a bit too far. But that's just less stuff we'll have to talk about in chapter 6. Anyway, continuing on. At this point, the only threat to Tyrion's power is the kingdom of Nalave, which refuses to rejoin the Empire and has basically declared itself independent and won't let the legions in and is threatening military action if the Empire does try to reincorporate them. Tyrion's response to this is he amasses the largest army the continent had ever seen for the sole purpose of reincorporating Nalave and sending a message to everyone. Treason will not be tolerated. And he basically sends this army on a slaughter mission. During this campaign, thousands, if not millions, of the people living in Nolave, which at that point wasn't an exclusively Dragonborn kingdom, but during this campaign, after this campaign, really the only people left in Nolave were Dragonborn and a few others. And it's not until like the capital, the last bastion of Nolave, is under siege and is about ready to fall, that the main god of the Dragonborn of Nolave decides to come to their aid, the god Bahamut, and basically he uses his influence with all the dragons, and he leads an army of dragons to lift the siege of the Nolavian capital. And in this battle, hundreds of dragons are killed, and Bahamut himself is wounded. But the Imperial army is routed, and the entire continent has been shown the Empire can be beaten. And at that, the continent no longer held the belief the Imperial legions were invincible, and as soon as the fires died down around the fields around the Nolavian capital, independent movements all across the continent rose up, and the Empire is finally on its deathbed. And now, discussion time. Any questions, Madeline?
Sorry, Nick. I'm having to. My parents called. Hold on.
Okay. That's fine. I can wait. Well, while we're waiting on Madeline, I guess I can talk about something else. Well, it's my birthday tomorrow, at the time of making this video. We are making this video on June 5th. My birthday is June 6th. So if any of you are feeling particularly nice, if you want to say a happy birthday in the comments, it'd be greatly appreciated. I mean, also I'd like to hear, like, what is your favorite bit of lore on the Shattered Kingdoms? That would also be interesting. Mostly the happy birthday would be appreciated. Then maybe let me know, like, what does your family normally do for your birthday, if anything? So personally, for me, we kind of have a tradition to go out to eat at Applebee's, and stuff like kind of, that's like a family tradition at this point. We do that every time that it's my birthday. Not just me. I'm pretty sure every family has their own tradition.
We don't.
Okay, I guess Madeline's family is very boring.
Well, we do a different thing every year.
That's even worse.
Why?
I don't know.
Like 1 year we go bowling, 1 year we go roller skating, some
Okay,
years we go
sure.
watch
Okay,
a
fine.
movie.
It's fun, but I don't know. It just doesn't feel right to me. Like, you need tradition. That just might be like my like history major side. Like showing.
We have other traditions. We just don't have birthday traditions. We
Okay.
have like every Thanksgiving we go to my aunt's house, and
Okay, I
every
guess that's a
Christmas we go to
tradition.
my grandfather's.
What else is a tradition in the Madeline household?
Do you not remember my last name?
I didn't want to say your last name on the recording.
That's fair.
Because I remember your last name. I just figured I shouldn't say. I figured we probably shouldn't say last names on recordings.
That's fair.
Because this will be on the internet. Well, I'm pretty sure like 99.9999% repeating
Yeah,
of
I get
people
it. I get it.
listening to this are like good and safe, but that point
Yeah,
zero
yeah, I
repeating
get it.
one, yeah, you get it.
I get it. Yeah, I
I
get
just
it.
don't want like someone to like stalk you or some shit.
Yeah, it's fine. Um, I mean, telling them family traditions certainly is not going to help that.
What to not have them stalk you?
Well, yes, because if they do find out who I am, they'll know where I am for those
Yeah,
specific holidays.
yeah. So it's just like let's not say last name. Uh, I just thought about that because I know my best friend, who shall not be named. You know who I'm talking about. They have like
Yeah,
a pseudonym that they use on most of their online stuff because they don't want people finding out who they are and stalking them. So
yeah, I think most people do that. I do that as well.
yeah,
But we can get back to the
yeah.
thing now.
So I take it your parents are done talking to you then.
Yeah,
Everything.
I was supposed to call them earlier, but my phone lost signal and only recently got it
Okay,
back.
that's fine. No, it wasn't anything
So
like
I
bad
told,
or anything, was it?
no, I told my mom that I wasn't able to call, but she did not inform my dad.
Oh.
So then he called thinking that,
Hmm.
he didn't realize that I was
Yeah.
busy.
I don't
Yeah,
know. Did you tell them that this is what you're doing, or this that you're busy?
I told him I was recording.
Oh, okay. But anyway,
Yeah.
family stuff aside, um, any questions on which chapter are we on? 5?
Yep.
Okay.
We should probably end it here, honestly.
Yeah. And then be done for today, or just end the video?
Yeah,
Okay.
just based on how long.
Yeah. All right. Let's yeah, why don't you ask some questions and then we'll end this? Okay.
Okay.
At least one question for this chapter.
Who the heck managed to injure Bahamut?
That would Bahamut flew into like 10 legions of Imperials, so about 100,000 people, and they were
Okay.
all focusing their fire on Bahamut. And eventually, they threw enough javelins, shot him enough times that he got a few scratches, and he had to just kind of leave for a while and take a nap. Like, he wasn't hurt
That's
too
fair.
bad, but he was hurt. And when you're a god and you're used to, like, never being hurt, that kind of scares you.
Fair.
So he kind of just, sat out the rest of the war until, you know, the thing I can't
Yeah.
say without spoiling stuff.
Yep.
Alright, well, unless you have any other questions, I think that's where we're gonna end. Okay.
I mean, I gotta think, man. There's a lot.
Okay.
You mentioned a lot of stuff.
Alright.
So who was the girl Tyrion liked? I know you didn't mention that, but
Okay,
I know
yeah.
that it had to have happened around this
Yeah, that
time.
happened around this time. Did I say how she died?
No, I think you might have mentioned it once, but it wasn't like specific.
She was. Yeah, I think it was an offhanded mention that she was killed by Nolavian separatists slash terrorists who were.
Right, she was in the carriage, right?
Yeah, they were like trying
Yeah.
to murder like the current emperor before Tyrion, who was riding in the city in a carriage. The fireball missed and hit the flower shop she was at, and basically roasted her like a marshmallow. Uh,
Unfortunate.
let's see. Do I want to go this route? Yeah, I think I'm gonna say her name was actually like Edelweiss, and but
That's
that too much?
Edelweiss?
Yeah, let's find something else. So I was gonna then say Tyrion established the kingdom of the White Flower, but that doesn't make too much sense. So let's find something else.
I mean, Edelweiss just seems like a more masculine name.
Yeah, it does.
Oh, it's a female name
Yes,
though,
it
huh?
is a female. Yeah, it is a female name.
It just sounds very masculine.
I mean, I have a male cat who's named Edelweiss, but I digress. What do you think we should what do you think her name should be?
You
Rose.
said
Oh,
the empire's or the imperial whatever that country is based on Roman, so it should be a Roman name.
Camilla. Let's go with
Camilla, a Roman name?
yeah,
it is. It is, apparently.
Yeah. I'm pretty sure that I've heard the name Camilla come up in some of the various like Roman media I consume on a daily basis.
Yeah.
Well, not a daily basis, but you know, like documentaries, Rome Total War, stuff like that. Nerdy stuff.
It can be.
But yeah, so Tyrion's the love of his life, Camilla, which I will forget. Can you just like DM me that name so I don't forget that Tyrion's love of his life is Camilla?
There you go.
Okay, thank you. So Camilla dies. Tyrion like cradles her charred corpse in his arms, and it's that moment. Up until that point, he's like, okay, I know that my father wants me to take control of the Empire and like help save it, but that's not me. I just want to live my life with Camilla and maybe like open a shop and just give her flowers and maybe have some kids. That was his ideal life up until that point. And then the Nalavian separatists stole that from him. And that kind of fostered this absolute hatred for Dragonborn in Tyrion. That's why he didn't try to do a diplomatic solution when it came to dealing with them. That's why when he marched his legions in, he's just like, kill them all. I don't want to see a single Dragonborn breathing when this is all over. I want their entire species wiped out. This is where, if Tyrion was ever good, this is where that ends. This is where he goes completely insane and is focused on revenge and his own, aggrandizing his own power. Basically, it's all revenge and power now for him. Everything he cares about is gone. She was basically his like sole reason for living. Now, all that's left for him to do is get revenge. And, well, after that, I guess, rule the Empire. Make sure that nothing like that ever happens again. Because that's kind of what ends up driving his whole, like, iron fist approach to everything. Because he doesn't want this to happen again. And that's kind of like what inspired him to do all the evil things that he does. Because he doesn't want another future Tyrion to have to go through seeing his Camilla burned alive with a fireball to a crisp and not be able to help her. So revenge and preventing that from happening in the future. I feel like I probably went on a long tangent to answer a simple question, didn't I? I mean, it is kind of like a major turning point in history, though, of the Shattered Kingdoms. Because if that fireball hadn't hit her, he probably never would have gone on the throne. And then the Empire would have just died with a whimper instead of its last hoorah before it just completely died. Which, if I say any more on that, it's going to be spoilers. So, any final questions?
I think you answered all of them.
So I think that's where we're going to end it for today, because I think we have gone on for quite a while. I'd just like to draw your attention to the fact that we have a YouTube channel called Shattered Kingdoms Campaigns Podcasts. I titled that way because in the future I imagine we'll probably start another campaign that we'll host on there. So I figured might as well just make it plural now, get it out of the way. We also
you could just say Shattered Kingdoms podcast. We don't. I mean,
yeah,
it's just kind of a mouthful.
Yeah, it is.
You know?
And then it could just be SKP for like an acronym instead of SKCP. That's just even the acronym is a mouthful.
Yeah.
Expect this may be changed in the future. Then
for now,
this is what it is. Also,
if you subscribe now, you won't have to worry about it changing.
If you subscribe now, you won't have to worry about it. Also, if you become a patron now, if anything changes, you won't have to worry about that either. Any amount that you donate is greatly appreciated. We mostly just do this for fun, but your donations will help us. Maybe, I don't know what we could use the money for, but I imagine we can probably find something to help make this more enjoyable for everyone.
Microphones, better editing software, maybe cameras if you want to do it that way.
Okay, well, Madeline came up with a lot of ideas there. She is kind of the ideas girl.
That is me.
Yep. She is the smart one. Yeah.